Hello, Joni Rotten here. I found this very interesting. This is a newer study. This came from ResearchGate. And I wanted to share it. It is from October of 2020. Exposure to so think of the date here. Exposure to common infections and risk of suicide and self-harm. A I can never say that word. A longitudinal general population study. This is really interesting. I'll read it just this little bit right here. Our abstracts and figures. So common infectious agents such as Toxoplasma gondii and several human herpes viruses have been linked to an increased risk of self-harm. The aim of this study was to investigate the associations between self-harm and seropositivity to T. gondii, Epstein-Barr virus, or EBV, herpes simplex virus type 1, or HSV1, and cytomegalovirus, or CMV. Seropositive, meaning that in their blood, they are positive for the antibodies for one or more of these infections. The IgM and IgG antibodies to these infections were measured in the Health 2000 project, nationally representative of the whole Finnish adult population. And 6,250 participants aged 30 and over were followed for 15 years via registers. In addition, lifetime suicidal ideation and suicide attempts based on medical records and interview were assessed with a subsample of 694 participants screened to a substudy for possible psychotic symptoms or as controls. And among these 6,250 participants, 14 individuals died of suicide, and an additional 4 individuals had a diagnosis of intentional self-harm during follow-up. Serological evidence of lifetime or acute infections was not found to be associated with these suicidal outcomes. However, in the subsample, those seropositive for CMV had fewer suicide attempts compared to those seronegative, adjusting for gender, age, educational level, children, childhood family size. Your childhood family size is counted in there. Regional residence, CRP, and screen status, or for multiple attempts equals 0.40, 95% confidential interval. To conclude, the common infections were not associated with the risk of death by suicide or with self-harm diagnosis at a 15-year-old follow-up in the general population sample. Our finding of an increased number of suicide attempts among persons seronegative for CMV does call for further research, and this is what I keep finding. So it doesn't seem to correlate with some of these other things, although there are other behaviors that do. But suicide repeatedly in studies that I've been going over since the 90s, some of which I've been sharing and some of which I'm just, they're going to just kind of repeat this. It's a different study, different year, basically the same thing. I'm just trying to recreate it. They all have this as we would like to study this more. So for at least, what is 90? 30 years, we've been saying call for more research, and then it's got a graph. Anyway, links in there if you want to go check it out yourself. CMV. Looks like that might be my next train stop. So we might dig into that a bit more. All right, interesting stuff.